What's up, humans, and welcome to a new episode of Psicoactivo. Today, I'm going to talk about the Colares incident, which is one of the most researched and one of the most controversial UFO incidents in history. Why? Because there are contradicting narratives. And Lue Elizondo's book just dropped another one that doesn't make a lot of sense if you take a look at this clip, a really old clip from none other than Dr. Jacques Valleé. Here it is.
Or could it be manipulated purposely by people who have the technology to simulate UFO sightings? And people say, well, of course not. Who would do a thing like that? I remind you that during the Watergate investigation, it was discovered that there was a plan originated in the White House to surface a submarine off the coast of Cuba and paint the second coming of Christ over the island of Cuba using holograms, which is well within our technology today. The idea was that since there is a large Catholic population in Cuba, they would be so upset by this vision that this would saturate the communication channels, the telephone system in Cuba, long enough for an invasion to take place.
How interesting. I'd never heard of that.
Well, I think that's a classic in psychological warfare, but that kind of manipulation is well understood, and I have personally investigated several apparently genuine UFO cases where there was in fact a manipulation. My conclusion, the conclusion of scientists working with me, was that there was in fact a manipulation taking place, and that it was not a hoax on the part of the witnesses, but a hoax on the part of somebody much better organized than
So there are possibly all of these levels going on simultaneously.
Today, with the current technology, that would be possible.
Okay, so apparently the government was recreating abductions. This is really interesting because Lue Elizondo talks about this in this fashion. Check it out. I'm going to read it to you guys. Chapter 2 is Colares. Shortly after I accepted the role, Jim and Jay invited me to a large group dinner for the team that was held in the private meeting room of a hotel in Rosslyn, Virginia. I had no way to prepare for the meeting. I had no idea what to expect. The program's leadership and a few of the Nevada contractors were meeting for the first time. The lead contractor was flying in on his private Gulfstream V jet to attend. Since I now knew my friend John worked as a liaison between his agency and the program, we walked to dinner together. In the lobby, we met Jim and Jay, who led us to a private dining room decked out with a long table set for dinner. The dinner was a baptism of fire. The billionaire hotelier, developer, and aerospace magnate Robert Bigelow joined us. He was the contractor I had been told about. Tall, mustached, and shaggy-headed, Bob entered the room with a serious but friendly look on his face. I had never met a billionaire before, and I assumed that they were all the same. Self-absorbed and cocky. Bob wasn't. He greeted everyone warmly and joined thoughtfully in his family lineage and predisposition for the topic. Or was he the man regarded by his peers as the most qualified to handle Brazil's biggest UAP events? At this point in time, Jim's program wasn't sharing UAP data with other nations out of a concern for national security. The meeting with Ochoa was different. He happened to be in town for another meeting, and Jim was able to put this dinner together last minute. But it turned out to be one of the most interesting dinners of my life. General Ochoa had befriended a Brazilian colonel, still living, who had originally investigated Brazil's most fascinating cases, spanning 30 years. They hoped to assemble as much data as possible to share with us. In a remarkable act of international cooperation, Bob Bigelow's team planned to compile a database listing every single factoid of the Brazil events, so it could be researched instantly and scanned for commonalities. When completed, this project would prove to be inordinately useful. Finding patterns in data is the key to analysis. I learned that in the mid 1970s, for several years running, people living along the coast of northeastern Brazil noticed strange lights and aircraft that buzz their small towns and villages at night. The objects ranged in size from baseball-sized orbs to huge aircraft that looked as if they could transport the occupants of an entire city. Flying discs, spheres, triangles, cylinders, the variety of the objects ran the gamut. Citizens in these rural villages were unaccustomed to nighttime illumination beyond the lights of passing cars and trucks. Now suddenly, a villager walking to visit the neighbor after dark might be bathed in the glow of something massive hovering in the sky. For centuries, humans all over the planet have reported such things. But in Brazil, these flying phenomena seem to be targeting human beings. People reported being chased by a fellow orb. After several yards of pursuit, the light turned blue before delivering a nasty laser-like blast that burned victims of or left them unconscious. Other people claimed that hovering aircraft attempted to lift them off the ground with nets and hooks and drag them up into the ships. Were these hooks and nets a metaphor for some advanced technology like a tractor beam, or were primitive tools like hooks and nets actually being used? It all seems so strange to me. As attacks increased, people quashed their natural curiosity and switched to outright terror. If a ship or orb or light appeared, they ran for their life. Dogs barked, livestock scattered, car engines stalled, forcing them to escape on foot or on the back of a beast of burden. The person reported that their donkey froze in place, paralyzed with fear. The witness then ducked under the animal's body to shield themselves. It didn't matter where you sought shelter. The lights pursued people to their homes and farms. Beams shot through tile roofs as if the roofs were made of gauze. This is very interesting because Valleé talks about a secret program that conducted artificial abductions in Brazil. This is something that, for example, Annie Jacobsen also talks about on her books, and it is like a fringe topic. There's been a lot of stuff going on in Peru and Brazil recently that where the famous Pelacaras talk about these beings that are on top of like some sort of hoverboards. And one of the little girls that talks about an encounter she had with one of these beings, she said that she heard an American accent speaking English. That is really strange. So what I want to know, I guess, is Lue is talking about abductions as in the NHI doing these abductions. And then Jacques Valleé is talking about artificial abductions done by the US government. I would love to know what Jacques thinks about this now.
And regarding the Brazilian case, someone had a specific question. Davey Pachico says, "Wow, nice, man. Keep fighting the good fight and asking the right questions. We all appreciate that. If possible, please ask Jacques what he thinks about the usually violent encounters in Brazilian cases."
I think an anthropologist would say, and I'm not an anthropologist, but you become sort of an amateur anthropologist after you speak to a few thousand witnesses. You have to look at the cultural conditions around, and some of the conditions in some countries are more towards hostile reaction to something you don't understand. I mean, certainly in the US, a number of these things have been shot at. you see something really strange on your ranch and you have a gun, that's in a way, it's a natural thing to think of. And we're a culture where there are lots of guns. The same thing is in Brazil. In France, the reaction would be more one either fear or terror and running away, but not engaging it in terms of fighting with it. So I think it's more of a reaction, of a reflection of the society where you are and, the part of the country where you are, rather than characteristic of the object itself or the entity itself. But there have been cases where, there were fights and there were hostile action. And I've gone through the periphery of the Amazon with people in Brazil who are investigators in Brazil. And yes, I've interviewed people who had been not shot, but had been hit by a beam and had been injured by a beam that was not any kind of laser beam that we can produce today.
The beam you mentioned before in one of the interviews that it comes out rather than completely goes to the end.
It comes out and it's burning and it pins you. Some of these people were sleeping in a hammock at night in Brazil, which is what you do. I mean, that's in the jungle and so on farms. Many people sleep in hammocks, and the beam would pin them to the couch or to the hammock.
And the beam had a physicality to it, a pressure to it?
We have the pictures.
A regular laser wouldn't.
No, we have the pictures of the marks of the beam on the skin, because they see a doctor takes a picture. We have the pictures, and Kevin, I've published them.
Sorry, Kevin, as a physicist, what do you think of that?
Well, I have another question, because it sounds a lot like the particle light beams that have been observed by people who have been lifted up into craft or claimed to have been lifted up. They say that it's like a particular light, particles of light rather than a light beam. And makes me wonder if that's the situation. I don't know how, a laser isn't going to pin you to a hammock, so something else is clearly going on in that case.
There may be different frequencies and different types of radiation involved. Yeah. I don't know how you retract a light beam, but
that's right. That's right. It doesn't sound like any particles I'm aware of. So, from a particle physics perspective, there's probably something interesting here.
And I would like to ask Lou if he has talked to Jacques about this before, and why does he simply think that these abductions were done by NHI? This opens up a whole new can of worms, I think. And I do think that it would be nice to get a little bit of clarity from both Lou and from Dr. Jacques Valleé about this specific topic, because Valleé specifically talks about the CIA conducting UFO abductions both in Brazil and also in Argentina as part of psychological warfare experiments. This was recovered in that document that confirmed this, and this was reported back in 1992. So, what do you guys think about this? What do you guys think about this inconsistency? It would be nice if we could get some answers from both Lou and Valleé, but please let me know in the comments. What do you think about the Colares UFO incident? Do you think it was NHI? Do you think it was the government? If it was the government, this ties into a lot of different stories that we've heard for many years. And it ties into the confronting narratives, right? That some think that the U.S. government and people close to Lue Elizondo want to push this as a threat narrative, which I don't think is the case. I just think Lue wants people to be aware that if NHI exists, they may not be all positive. At least that's what I think that Lue is trying to do. And the other narrative that says that the NHI are all positive, which I think is also wrong, because I don't think we can be that naive. I think that if NHI exists and there are multiple different either species or forms of NHI, I don't think they're all good. That's impossible. I think that any species that is intelligent, that is above another species, can literally do anything they want with the other species that is weaker and has less technological advancements. We've done it for many centuries. So think about that. I'm not saying that there are no good NHI species. There might as well be. But I'm just saying, don't be naive. I don't think they're all good if they exist. Think about that. So please, guys, let me know what you think. Drop a comment, drop a like, hit that subscribe button. Every little bit helps. If you want to help the channel in any other way, you can check out the links in the description. I left a couple of links for donations, and I left a couple of links so you can buy yourself something or get something from the Amazon wish list that is going to help the Psicoactivo channel keep moving forward with more hardware and all that stuff. So without further ado, I'll leave you guys until the next video. Take care. Bye.